Hey, welcome in. It's Tuesday night in East Lansing. Jim Comparoni, publisher of SpartanMag.com. Welcome in. Sorry we're a little bit late again, but I'm always cramming, trying to get some last minute information. I was over at Michigan State basketball practice earlier tonight and driving around taking care of things like a lot of you guys do, but wanted to get back and check out some of the latest information bouncing around on the Michigan State website at rivals.com, which is SpartanMag.com if you're not familiar with it. The Underground Bunker message board. It is the church of what's happening now with Michigan State athletics. This is the YouTube live podcast branch of SpartanMag.com. SpartanMag.com has been around since about 1996, 1997. A lot of you have been with us that whole time. We appreciate the Spartan Maggers that have been with us for so long, being a part of SpartanMag.com, helping that become the best Michigan State online community anywhere on the internet, if you don't mind me saying. Come on in, let's ask us some questions. What we do here is we answer mailbag questions. I invite SpartanMag.com subscribers over at the Underground Bunker message board and the Final Forum message board, the basketball message board, to post questions. We will field some of those questions and also get to your questions live here on the YouTube broadcast. It's always a lot of fun. We always meet some new people, sometimes meet some new people. Some old standards like Old Tuck, we haven't seen him in a couple weeks. Maybe he'll be back. We look forward to learning more about him and the rest of the subscribers as we go along, but not too much. We don't want to know too much, do we? But anyway, we'll go straight to the mailbag, and then we'll talk about some things that have been happening here lately. Let's go with, there is Old Tuck chiming in right now. I had something special for him, but I forgot it. Maybe next week. Anyway, we'll go straight to the questions. Then we'll talk about what's going on in East Lansing these days. Let's see, for the questions. All right, let's get right to it. We've been talking about this a number of times throughout the off season, and even while the regular season was still going on, talking about the coaching staff. BCJR13 from Detroit, Michigan asks, what are you hearing, if anything, on the coaches? Do you think we will see some new faces next season? Yeah, I think we will see. I've said that from at the end of the season. I thought so, and then I heard that there were some post-season exit poll interviews in which some assistant coaches basically, it was like a re-interview process. What can you bring to the program? Why should you keep your job at this point still? But D'Antonio, as you know, rightly or wrongly, for better for worse, he does have a soft spot in his heart, and that's one of the reasons he's had such great loyalty to him on his staff over the years. Now can he turn that around and push people off that maybe need to be pushed off? At the end of the season, I thought one or two changes. Then the thing happened at Florida State. Harlan Barnett, part of that staff, losing their job in Tallahassee. I have heard from good sources that Michigan State has spoken with Harlan Barnett. Michigan State would like to make something happen with Harlan Barnett. There are some contract questions that need to be resolved. He has a really handsome contract at Florida State. If he takes an assistant job at Michigan State, does that change things? Does it change things if he doesn't take a coordinator job? Those are things I'm not sure. I've not seen his contract, but I know Michigan State has been in contact with him. That goes back a few weeks. What kind of room could they make for him? Defensive backs coach? Analyst? I don't know. They like to have him at some point. As you know, Paul Haynes is the defensive backs coach. Terry Samuel is the cornerbacks coach. Could Terry Samuel conceivably move to become running backs coach or something like that? I'm not sure. Now, there was some interesting conversation over at the Underground Bunker stemming from something that Graham Couch said on his podcast. Graham Couch, very respected among journalists. As a journalist, as a reporter, opinion writer, columnist. And he said on his podcast a couple of weeks ago that he was hearing there would be no changes, and that set off a lot of feelings of discontent on our message board. Michigan State fans unhappy with that news or that rumor. Of course, we're not going to shoot the messenger on that. We're just talking about Michigan State football here like it's a bar or something. So pour something in your drink. That's what we talk about here. We're going to talk about Michigan State football. Haven't been very good lately, have they? They've been pretty good, not as good as the standard. D'Antonio admits that. So that led to some discontent, some disgruntlement, but it's not fact yet. And I said at that time that I'd been hearing that the exit poll interviews were still ongoing. Now, that was before the convention and everything, the coaches' convention. Since then, a day or so ago, apparently Graham Couch, I did not hear it, but it was posted on our message board, that Graham Couch had said that as many as four changes could take place on the staff. I've not heard that. I've been checking back in with my sources, haven't heard that lately, but I wouldn't, I take that rumor or that report from Graham Couch at face value. I have a lot of respect for that. That information, makes me wonder, have they had conversations since the convention? The timing of that thing is very interesting. Also, last Friday, excuse me, Mark D'Antonio did not meet with media at the annual high school coaches, the Michigan High School Coaches annual clinic in East, or actually in Lansing. Usually he goes up there and speaks to the Coaches Association clinic, and then afterward meets with those of us in the media for about, 8 or 10 minutes, fields 4 or 5 questions, and then he's on his way. This time, D'Antonio did not want to meet with media. Interestingly, this time, Jim Harbaugh spoke the day before. Now, Harbaugh spoke at the coaches clinic, the Michigan High School Coaches Association clinic, the very first year he was hired at Michigan, before he had coached a game at Michigan, but had not spoken at the clinic since. He spoke this year. D'Antonio has spoke at that clinic every single year since he's been head coach at Michigan State. This time he didn't meet with media afterward, declined to talk. Now, that coincided with continuing controversy surrounding the Curtis Blackwell situation and D'Antonio being deposed as part of that lawsuit. No question about it. He probably would have been asked about that situation, and he probably didn't want to talk about it. I don't want to speculate why he didn't, but we can guess. The Austin Robertson thing had been back in the Detroit News a week earlier. He has spoken about that in the past. I posted on the message board something Mark D'Antonio could have done that day is he could have met with media and said, hey, I'm only going to ask questions about players on my football team. And then those questions might have come anyway, and he would have said, hey, I'm only talking about guys on my football team. If you don't respect that, then we can just end this right now, or I can answer a couple more questions. That's maybe the way other people would have done it, but D'Antonio just didn't want to talk. That's his prerogative, but like I said, that doesn't do much to improve his approval rating with people that are, with fans that are a little bit grumpy about things. And I understand their point of view. I understand D'Antonio's point of view. I'm just sitting here at the 50-yard line, 55-yard line if you're a CFL guy. And just calling it like I see them. And I don't think he did himself any favors by not speaking that day, but I'm biased. I'm a journalist. I'd like for him to talk a little bit. But I don't know everything that was going through his mind. That being said, maybe that was a reason that he didn't want to talk, because he might have been asked, will you come back with the full staff? And maybe he didn't want to say yes if he thinks it might not be that way. Maybe he was not comfortable saying he's still evaluating because recruiting is still going on. Maybe that's the main reason he didn't talk. Maybe that coincides with some of the information Graham Couch reported, that he's hearing as many as 4 staff members might be changing. Anyway, the question from BCJR from Detroit, he asks, what am I hearing? Right now, nothing. I've got to check in with some other sources. Do I think we will see some new faces for next season? Yes, I do think we will see some new faces. I think there's a good chance Harlan Barnett will be back in some capacity. Wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of a shakeup on offense with some changes there possibly. And I think Brad Salem will be coming back. I think they want to give him another shot at it, many more shots at it. They're confident with him. Questions about other assistant coaches on the offense in particular, not sure. As far as other news goes, this is the first time that we've done a podcast since Cody White announced that he is foregoing his senior year in order to enter the NFL draft. Really, I posted about this on the Underground Bunker message board when that happened. It is old news, but it does have a big impact on Michigan State for next year. I mean, he finished the season strongly, had a good bowl game. I'm not an NFL scout, but I would think this is a big mistake for him to join the NFL draft. I would be surprised if he gets drafted just because of some of the inconsistency. But in the NFL, they draft on potential. And he's got some potential. What kind of numbers will he put up in terms of speed? I'm not sure. But on one hand, I'm surprised he did it because I don't think he's ready, and I think he can help himself if he comes back next year. On the other hand, I am not surprised because, as I posted on the Underground Bunker, no disrespect to Cody White, good kid, good heart, does his best with interviews and so forth, but he always struck me as being not the most self-aware guy out there. Immature. Not immature in terms of doing bad things off the field, but there's just been times just in a lot of ways not really self-aware. I don't want to get into all of those. I mean, on the field, just, on the verge of getting personal fouls from celebrating or things like that, or his body language if a quarterback doesn't throw to him when he thinks he's opened. He did that earlier in the season, not as much midway through the season. Can't think of any other, sometimes when, early in this season, and it happened last year a little bit, I know C.J. Hayes did it once, not running the right route combination, but the proper route. But Cody White just could use some more physical and I'd say mental maturity on the field. That being said, not the most mature guy, not the most self-aware guy. Therefore, I'm not surprised that he entered the NFL draft. And I'm not surprised to hear that he didn't even look into it very deeply. Did not reach out to NFL general managers. Even though his father has a lot of experience at the executive level in the NFL, it's my understanding not a lot of research was done before he made that decision. So, that being the case, that's what I hear. Got to wonder, why wasn't his father, Sheldon White, more into that decision? Hearing that Sheldon wants Cody to be his own man and so forth. Maybe he's overrating Cody also. I'm not sure. Don Treadwell and Mark D'Antonio, how can they allow this to happen? I'm sure they had a little talk with him, but and they've got an 85-man roster with a lot of bells and whistles and moving plates. It's hard to put your arm around everybody and know every single situation out there. But on a smaller scale, when Izzo is going through this, he usually has some really deep-seated conversations with players about these things. The one exception would be 2002 when Marcus Taylor abruptly turned pro. Izzo didn't agree with that, would have lobbied against it, would have advised against it, but Marcus Taylor was not, and his dad really were not hearing anything from Izzo at that time. They were in their own world, drafted in the second round. They were upset about it. About that. The rest is history. Marcus Taylor, good guy. If he'd come back, would he have become a Spartan legend in 03 and 04? They went to the Elite Eight in 03. He had just led the Big Ten in assists and scoring. Good college player, only played 2 years. Would he have improved his draft stock? Maybe, maybe not, because he was not a great athlete. But Cody White, I think, made a mistake. Hurts him, hurts the team. And I think we might be talking about that for some time to come. Has he hired an agent? I don't know. Is there a chance he could change his mind and come back? I've not heard that, but if ever there were a Michigan State player to enter the NFL draft and decide to come back, I would think he'd be a candidate to rethink things and do that. I'm not predicting that. I'm not saying I've heard that. It did happen with a team this past weekend. Was it a kid from Clemson or a kid from Georgia? Decided to come back after initially entering his name in the NFL. Anyway, that's it on Cody White. As far as basketball practice today over at Michigan State, watched a good portion of it. Gabe Brown playing well for Michigan State, had a big game against Wisconsin on Friday night. Michigan State beat Wisconsin 67-55. Michigan State 14-4, 6-1 in the Big Ten, ranked number 11 in the country. And Gabe Brown, what was he? Had 13 points, 5 of 5 from the field, 2 of 2 from three-point range. The best we've seen Gabe Brown play in terms of just being fluid and confident, and just going up with his shot, finishing on the break. There was one possession when Gabe Brown was playing defense about as well as I've ever seen him play. Long, quick, into the playbook, covering ground, and then released in transition, running the right lane, down the sideline, received a pass, went up. I think he got fouled. But in terms of his defense, turning his defense into a sprint down the sideline, he reminded me of Morris Peterson, not just with a left-handed jumper, not just with his ability to finish dunks in transition. Second-year player, I'm sitting there watching that, and I'm thinking Morris Peterson. Not exact, but similar in a lot of ways. And Izzo at the press conference today compared him a little bit to Morris Peterson, saying he is further along than Morris Peterson was at this point in his career. At this point in his career, Morris Peterson, remember, was a redshirt freshman and just starting to get things going. Brown playing 30-plus minutes now for a higher-ranked team. Yes, he is further along than Peterson. Peterson could handle the ball better. Peterson eventually became a real good rebounder. Gabe Brown had a sensational defensive rebound during that Wisconsin game at one point. Like Izzo said today, he loves coaching Gabe Brown, even though there are some mistakes here and there, and they're trying to fine-tune that IQ. They always know that his heart's in the right place, and he's a hard worker, and he gets after it. Also hard workers. Rocket Watts today working on that jump shot. When they are doing, they broke down to like a 7-8 minute period in which they worked on what they call assisted shooting. It's when you get with a partner, and he sends you passes, and you catch him and shoot, and catch him and shoot. Might be a rebound coming from inside out. You shoot. You take X number of shots, then you switch. Or you get as many as you can in a certain amount of time. Rocket Watts, I like this. He'd get bothered if he didn't get the ball back quickly. He wanted the ball so he can get as many shots up as he could. I like that midway through the practice, working on his own game, working on his shot. He was irritated if he didn't get an extra shot or two up. That's Rocket Watts. And had a nice game against Wisconsin. Watts 4 out of 7 from the field, 3 out of 5 from three-point range. You saw it, creating his own three-pointer, whether he was going between his legs or behind the back, but all three were step back off the dribble. Nailing three-pointers, making a difference. Playing some good defense, moving his feet, doing a good job. We'll get back to the mailbag in a second. Actually, let's do that right now. All right, recruiting. Macklin JB from Rochester asks, out of the prospects that the Michigan State staff, has offered or shown interest in recently, who am I impressed with, and which players seem like a reach? Of the recruits that Michigan State has shown recent interest in, who am I impressed with, and who seems like a reach? I'll be back to answer that in about 11 seconds. I'm going to go over here and turn something off, and I'm going to think about that question. Michigan State, they might have, 3 or 4 scholarship slots available still? Let me see. So who are they? I'm just turning on the YouTube channel because I haven't done that yet, just so I can see what some of your questions are here in a moment. Go ahead and file some questions. We will take a look at them. As far as recruits, the running back, Donovan Eglin, out of Manville, Texas, 5'11", 226. Good indications. Corey Robinson doing a real good job covering that recruitment. Michigan State in a real good position there. Michigan State offered a scholarship this past weekend. Michigan State scheduled for an in-home visit with him Wednesday of this week. That's tomorrow night as we are recording this. You might be, if you're watching this on Thursday and Friday, it already happened, and he may already be a Michigan State commitment. Michigan State looking pretty good. Meanwhile, other schools have been speaking with Donovan, Eglin, trying to get him to visit. Corey asked Donovan which schools is he hearing from, and Corey Robinson reports that Arkansas, Florida State, Oklahoma State have all been in contact with him. Michigan State's offered, and mid-majors have offered. Now, why haven't the others offered? Corey Robinson reported, it's not a story anywhere, but he and I talk, and I really value his reporting out on the street, word on the street from Corey Robinson, and he tells me that those schools, Arkansas, Florida State, Oklahoma State, wanted him to visit, scholarship offer pending, which is the way Michigan State did it too. Visited without the offer, came in, took a look at him, got to know him, then offered. Similar situations with Arkansas, Florida State, Oklahoma State. They want him to visit. Right now, no visits are scheduled. Right now, things look good for Michigan State. All right, am I impressed with him? Somewhat impressed. I wouldn't say I'm as impressed with him as I was with, say, Brandon Wright. When Brandon Wright, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, had a Michigan State offer and committed. Now, when Wright committed to Michigan State, that was in the summer. He had not played a lot the year before as a junior, I think it was, but had some excellent film. Excellent film. You know that with Brandon Wright. Now, that was early in a recruiting calendar, recruiting cycle. When I watched this film, I'm like, yeah, I can definitely see what Michigan State sees in him. When I see Eglin, I can see why Michigan State likes him and why other schools are intrigued. There was an article in the Detroit News quoting his high school coach, talking about Eglin being as good as some other running backs that school has produced, Division I running backs that school has produced in recent years, saying that Eglin is right there with those guys. And I don't doubt that. For a big guy, 226, has some power. The uncommon positive trait about him is he's got some change of direction. And he makes that change of direction with change of speeds and some good quickness. He doesn't waste a lot of footsteps in order to change direction. Combine that with some power, you can get something out of that. Size-wise, 5'11", 226, reminds me of Ashton Leggett, the former Michigan State player. Had one 100-yard game against Western Michigan. Leggett, I think, was from Muskegon, transferred, I think, to Western Michigan. I don't know what he did after Michigan State. Leggett had, for a big guy, had decent cruising speed. Not really take it to the house, big speed for a big guy. That's rare. But Eglin has better change of direction than Leggett. Leggett was a big back that had some power, but maybe not great power. So I think Eglin is right there with Ashton Leggett in terms of frame and juice, but more sauce, to use an old 90s term. Am I impressed with him? I wouldn't say impressed, but I would say I can see what Michigan State sees in him. Meanwhile, Michigan State's waiting for Jordan Simmons. He's going to be visiting, I think, this weekend. Got about 5 inches of snow on the ground. Not sure how cold it's going to be. It's been holding in the 20s lately. Not bad. The snow is not dirty snow right now. You know when you get dirty snow and clean snow? Right now, I think it's kind of clean, pretty snow right now. It's not that dirty, slushy, miserable snow that you get later in the winter, or if there's not been a snowfall in a while. But anyway, with Simmons still out there, and they have to wait till February to see if he's going to sign. Michigan State right now has 3 scholarship running backs in the program. I don't know if they want to put all their eggs in the Simmons basket because he could skate right now. I don't think he's going to. All indications are he's going to come here with both parents. He's going to commit or remain committed, not visit anywhere else. Sign in February. We've seen stranger things happen. Michigan State believes that, but then look at Michigan State's actions. Michigan State's actions are they've been recruiting other running backs. The kid from Houston committed to Arizona, and then they move on to this kid. Does that indicate that Michigan State's not 100% confident that they're going to get Simmons? I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit of running back insurance. Anyway, Looks like Michigan State's going to go ahead and take a commitment from Eglin and then sign Simmons, bring in 2 running backs. I had heard that Michigan State was also looking in the transfer portal a little bit at running back, but we've not heard anything in terms of Michigan State interest, serious interest with running backs at this point. So as far as Eglin goes, it makes me wonder back about Penny Boone, the highly ranked 4-star running back for Detroit Cass Tech. He had some interest in Michigan State, a lot of interest in Michigan State. Michigan State was a little bit slow to get in contact with him and a little bit slow to offer him, but I think they did offer. Then Michigan State just kind of put other running backs ahead of him. Jordan Simmons, I could see that, but they don't have Jordan Simmons yet. Penny Boone committed to Maryland, I think it is. 4-star, good running back, Detroiter. Is there a reason they didn't go full blast for him? I'm not sure. Was he one of those guys that Michigan State could have, should have, would have gone after harder if Michigan State had been more aggressive and maybe more organized with in-state recruiting and Southeast recruiting at the beginning of at about this time last year? Maybe. I don't know. It's hard to get coaches to, coaches aren't going to admit something like that. Admit that they were late with something. I don't know. They ended up offering him. He goes to Maryland. Now Michigan State is offering this guy. If Penny Boone were still available, would they be going after him now? Do they wish they still had a chance at him? Fair questions. I don't know the answer. All we can do is watch Penny Boone in college and look back and wonder. In the meantime, as far as the comparison between those two, there is some comparison between Donovan Eglin and Penny Boone. I think they're somewhat similar. I think Boone is a little bit taller and a little bit faster, but I think Eglin is more elusive. And elusiveness at that size, it's an uncommon trait, and I don't put it past him to become a good, solid, productive running back at the college level. Impressed with him in some ways, sure. Now, I'll give you one reach and then one guy I'm impressed with. The reach would be the tight end Marcuston Douglas. Nothing against him. Brownsville, Tennessee, Haywood High School. 6'5", 6'5", 250, good size. He's been a guy that's been focused on basketball in the past, playing tight end now. I think he's going to visit Michigan State this weekend. No offer yet. This is a dark horse. Decent hands, nice frame, big legs. Not really like fast, threaten the seam legs. More like offensive lineman legs. Do they see him possibly as an offensive lineman? Maybe he has that frame. But again, he's a guy that's always been basketball first, so not as physical at tight end as you would want if you're thinking long-term offensive tackle out of this guy. So I'm not sure that theory holds. I just think he's one of these guys that's not economical with his feet. I mentioned that Eglin, I think I said this about Eglin. I'll say it about this other guy too in a moment, another player. Eglin can change directions with economical feet, changing directions without using too many footsteps to do so. Plant and go, plant and go. Douglas is not really a plant and go, change of direction guy when running routes. And his acceleration is not great. Not real quick right now getting in and out of his routes. Has to work on that. Does he not have the horsepower to do it? I don't know. So, maybe he's a guy that can improve those things. It's hard. Those are hard things to improve. Is that a reach? I don't want to discredit him. He doesn't. He's got his chances regardless of what I say. What I say doesn't matter a bit to Michigan State or Marcuston Douglas. They're going to do their thing. I have no impact on it at all. Now, if he were being recruited if he were a 4-star recruit, now we're saying this, and he had people in his ear, and some other schools were looking to pay him, and Michigan State wasn't, and I was on this podcast criticizing him, then the people looking to get money out of a player like that would get in his ear and say, hey, man, those Michigan State people are saying bad things about you. Look at this. That used to happen all the time in basketball. Not things that I would say necessarily, maybe sometimes, and that stuff would get back to them. And when recruiting gets shady, that stuff can upset the apple cart. This is not a shady recruitment. This guy doesn't have many offers. I'm just telling you what I think. You asked me a good question. did Macklin JB out of Rochester, Michigan. Which of these guys impressed me? Which of them are reaches? If I were to put someone in the reach category, I would say the tight end, Douglas, just because he's a project. Not a lot of burst, quickness, getting in and out of his routes. Big guy, which is okay if you're a devastating blocker, but he's been a basketball first guy in the past. The blocking aspect will also be a project part of it. So that's that. In terms of players I'm impressed with, and I'm just a reporter that I've seen, 10,000 recruits over the last couple dozen years. Doesn't make me an expert by any means. I'm not Gil Brandt by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just a reporter, and we like to talk recruiting. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Josiah Robinson is a guy that impresses me a little bit. And I know that some of you at the Underground Bunker message board were impressed with his athleticism also. Some of the athleticism on his film, I think the speed was turned up a little bit on that film. And sometimes that might be inadvertently. Maybe they're filming something with batteries that are wearing out, and it can create a Charlie Chaplin effect. But Josiah Robinson listed at 6'3", 230, defensive end, outside linebacker out of Groveport, Ohio, Groveport Madison High School. And that's the high school that produced Le'Veon Bell and Eric Smith, two of the better, under-recruited, under-the-rock, diamonds in the rough, future or eventual NFL players that Michigan State has had in the last 20 years. Both came from Groveport Madison. For whatever reason, players come out of there and they're not always ranked and they're not always getting a lot of coverage and attention. Robinson needed to improve his academics. Corey Robinson did a great job illuminating that aspect of his recruitment. Brought his grades up. Mike Tressel's been recruiting him. Maybe they've been keeping him a little bit quiet. Mike Tressel was also the guy that recruited Le'Veon Bell. You look at Robinson, quickness, man. Quick twitch to cross your face and go. Quick twitch and then fast first two steps. Well coached because he really works an arm over move and he does it quickly. Quick with a rip move. And then the athleticism with the closing speed or leaping ability. You saw closing speed and leaping ability on a couple of blocked punts that he had on special teams. But when closing in on a quarterback, you see that closing speed. And I think like plus closing speed for defensive end. Straight line speed. Two-step acceleration. Can make himself small. Can make himself small when eluding a blocker, whether it be an arm over or a rip. Can get sideways and keep coming. Not an easy guy to get his hands on. Not an easy guy for a blocker to get his hands on you. And that's not all. When guys have good moves and quickness, there's usually a negative somewhere. A lot of times, people that check those boxes might lack power. But then you turn on the tape, this guy's got some power. Or as D'Antonio would say, he has some shock to him. You watch his film and he lines up and engages with a left tackle and gets a lot of shock on him and puts him on his butt. Now, that left tackle is kind of a smallish guy and got him on his heels and beat him, but still did it to an Ohio left tackle. There's another one on a left tackle, gets him in a bull rush, and you just see some core strength getting low and just pushes him back into the pocket. It's like, oh, all that and some power. Then there's one time when he takes on a double team, splits it, and moves both guys back into the end zone, gets a sack and nearly gets a safety, beating a double team with some strength. So that was something that Brandon Randall, I think, lacked a little bit from Battle Creek. Although he looked beautiful and had a lot of horsepower, didn't have the longest arms, Brandon Randall. Had some speed, but if you got your hands on him, didn't have real great hands to defeat it, didn't develop that, didn't have power to get off. And if you got your hands on Brandon Randall, he was done. Transfer portal, I'm not sure where he's going now. Western Michigan, maybe something like that. And Randall had some great speed in high school. This guy's got some quickness and speed and some moves, but I think longer arms than Brandon Randall and more ability to defeat people with some strength. Now, at the college level, he's not going to line up and bull rush people, like Robert Smith or anything like that. But the fact that he shows that strength at the high school level leads me to believe that a lot of that would carry over to college in terms of combine that with some hands, and you're not going to just knock him over like a feather pillow. He can withstand some force and have a chance to defeat it or elude it, make himself small. Meanwhile, what that tells me is that at the point of attack, if you're going to run power right at him, can he take on a double team as a defensive end? Maybe in a couple of years. Can he do one-on-one two-gapping a guy? Can he hold the point of attack? I think he projects as a guy that can do that. So I'm impressed with Josiah Robinson. I think he looks like a 3-star. Not a low 3-star, maybe not a high 3-star. I'd call him a mid-level 3-star. But if you told me that he had offers from Iowa, which he does not, and Michigan State and Minnesota, which he does not, I wouldn't be surprised. And I'd say, and if you told me he was a high 3-star, I'd say I can see that. So that's a guy that I'm impressed with. In terms of guys that I would compare him to, when I see someone like this with not many offers, it makes me want to go watch some MAC film, some MAC recruits, to see what MAC recruits look like, to get refreshed, to see what MAC recruits look like these days, so that I'm not just always looking at Michigan State offer guys. I want to see some MAC recruits that don't look like they're good enough to get a Michigan State offer, just so I can just spruce up my frame of reference a little bit, if that makes sense. So I went back and looked at some MAC film from, I think, 2015. I looked at Michael Dana. Remember Michael Dana? Warren De La Salle, under-recruited, 2-star, goes to Central Michigan, becomes an all-league player, a lot of sacks, impact player at Central Michigan. I think only 6'2". Dana then transferred to the University of Michigan this year, played for Michigan. Had an impact, was okay there, good enough to play for Michigan. I looked at Dana's high school film and Robinson's high school film, and Robinson's high school film is better. Robinson is a little bit taller, he's quicker, he's stronger, and he's faster than Dana was in high school. Dana was a little thicker. I'm not sure about, the only part of their comparison I've not looked deeply into is their ability to turn the corner and run the hoop. Dana, I suspect, was pretty good at that, but I've got to look at his high school film to see if he showed that in high school. I looked at a few clips. I need to look at all of it. I've watched some of Josiah Robinson, not all of it. From what I've watched with Robinson, he checked a lot of those boxes, but I didn't see him turn the corner yet. I saw him turn the corner a little bit, but I never saw him really go wide and get tested that way. I've not seen that part. Maybe that's something he can't do or not do real well. Brandon Randall couldn't do it real well. Worked on it, got better at it, but he was a little stiff in the hips. Robinson, I don't know that he is that. I don't know that he's not that. I've not seen him turn the corner, get his hips out, hip and ankle flexibility, those things. I got to look at the Dana film too, also to go along with that comparison. So that's that. I'm going to go ahead and invite people on Twitter to join the fun here. So bear with me for a second while I try to get a little word out. We'll see what kind of, like I said last time, we'll see what kind of riffraff that brings in. Last time we had a lot of good fun, didn't we? Not much riffraff. We got Corey minding the gates on that. So let's see what happens. Just threw that out there. Anyway, appreciate everybody chiming in. Now let's go to the questions here in the YouTube area, the chat area. Rob South checking in. Rob South's always the first guy here. We appreciate that. Rob South is the regular. If we handed out helmet stickers, Rob South would be among the leaders. Old Tuck back in attendance. I mentioned him earlier. He shows up. Austin via Ludington, Michigan. Still waiting. I know he's a Lake Michigan guy. And I still have Lake Huron #1 right now. That could change at any time. Went up to Lake Huron for a hockey tournament up by Alpena a few weeks ago. Good people up there. Nice people. Nothing against anywhere else, but the nicest people in the state of Michigan are right here. Right there. In my opinion. Old Tuck says Bob Organ country. Yeah, Ludington is Bob Organ country, right? Number 92. Very difficult to tackle at tight end. Often took 3 people to tackle him. One time we had an old cover of Spartan magazine with Bob Organ on the cover with 3 Central Michigan players trying to tackle him. That was 1993, the year Perlis finally beat Central Michigan. The late, great George Perlis. Good man. Old Tuck says, Comp, you've changed a bit on your stance around football staff changes, etc. What caused that? Good question. Getting right to it. Oh, number 94, Old Tuck. Man, Old Tuck got me on that one. What did I say, 92? Old Tuck. You got me. How about Old Tuck showing me something with some old school early 1990s trivia? He's been a fan for a long time, an astute follower of Michigan State sports. You say I've changed my stance around football staff changes. Not entirely. Remember at the end of the season, I said I expected 1 or 2 changes. Maybe I didn't say it was needed. I thought that it would happen for political reasons, because football coaches, like it or not, are politicians. And if political winds are blowing against them, you change things. It's the way it is, rightly or wrongly. Some head coaches look at those political winds and they flip a bird into it. I think that's what my man David Cutcliffe did at Ole Miss. They wanted him to fire 1 or 2 of his coordinators, and he'd gone 8-4, 9-4 a couple times. And he said, "Nah, man, you can just fire me or I quit." So they fired him, and they haven't been the same since. Mark Richt at Miami, they wanted him to fire, I think, his son on the staff. And he said, "You know what? I quit." And they haven't been the same since. We'll see if Miami's any better next year with Derek King. I thought those 2 young quarterbacks they had last year. Remember that freshman that played against Florida in the opener last year, the true freshman? Skinny guy, but showed some potential. I forget his name, but I thought he looked pretty good. King is a runner first, throws a little bit, but so I expected 1 or 2 changes, just mainly. Do I want to say mainly because D'Antonio would go with the political winds? I don't know what he's thinking. I don't want to act like I know what he's thinking. I just anticipated a couple changes. Now I'm saying that they should have some changes. Yes, I am. And not just because the offense has been terrible statistically the last couple of years. There have been some reasons for that, some injuries, but also just remember when, I don't know. I'm getting some information from some good sources that, hey, chemistry is just not as great on that staff as it used to be. And one of the strengths was the way they cooperated with each other and had great chemistry. And if that's not there, it's hard enough to win at this level. If you don't have everyone rowing and pulling in the same direction at Michigan State University, the athletic situation, the athletic department, the football program is not going to operate at an optimal level. We used to say that back in the early 90s when Perlis was going against Maryland Dean Baker, and then Baker was gone, and you had athletic directors against people and back and forth, presidents against the football coach. It was that way when Nick Saban was coach, and I'm not sure he got along great. At least I know he didn't get along great with Merritt Norvell. Nick Saban's not the easiest guy to get along with, but not sure what Merritt Norvell was doing or not doing, but that wasn't great. Saban's relationship with President Peter McPherson soon soured. They weren't quite pulling in the same direction, and Michigan State kind of floundered. 1 step forward, 2 steps back for a long time. Clarence Underwood did a great job getting everybody back on the same page, getting everybody getting along again. That was a great contribution for him. Handed it off to Mark Hollis. Hollis was not yet athletic director when Michigan State hired Mark D'Antonio, but Hollis was given the reins on that one instead of Ron Mason, because Ron Mason had hired John L. Smith. Didn't go very well. John L. Smith didn't get along with some members of the Board of Trustees. You may remember him butting heads with Joel Ferguson. So, John L. Smith did his best, but, there were other problems there. But gradually, things were starting to get back in the right direction in terms of everyone at Michigan State pulling in the same direction. Clarence Underwood got that going. Mason, I'm not sure Ron Mason was ever clear on what an athletic director was supposed to do, and he pretty much told me that once. Did his best. Hired John L. Smith. Was not the smoothest coaching search in the history of college football by any means. Handed it off to Mark Hollis. He did a great job, obviously, hiring Mark D'Antonio. When D'Antonio was hired, Izzo said, okay, now we got Izzo, we got Hollis, we got D'Antonio, got Luana Simon. Izzo's quote at that time was, we are going to be thick as thieves. They're going to close ranks, and they're going to find out what they needed to do and get it going. Nobody knew that there was this terrible thing going on outside the athletic department that would take down Hollis and Luana Simon. It stemmed from outside of the athletic department, stemmed from the medical portion of the university, infiltrated, of course, the gymnastics program and other programs. And that was Mark Hollis's gymnastics coach. Even though Hollis did not oversee Kathy Klages on a day-to-day basis, that was his gymnastics coach, and he was accountable for it. I wonder if it would be right and proper and prudent for a program, an athletic department, to have an athletic director who is only in charge of football, basketball, and maybe hockey, maybe women's basketball, and that's it. So that if something terrible like that happens again, yes, technically it was under Hollis's watch, but he had so many things to do. It's no excuse. But should he have gone down because of that? You talk to some people, they think he got a raw deal. I don't know, not my opinion. But if someone else, who was the person? There was another athletic director, I can't think of her name. She was in charge of overseeing most of the Olympic sports. If you make that person co-athletic director, totally in charge of those, and relieve your main athletic director from worrying about any of that stuff, that might be a good way to set up a firewall against some of those plates crashing that are not within his peripheral vision. Anyway, he was athletic director, which meant he was overseeing, technically, the gymnastics program. He's out, as he should be, but had nothing to do with any of that, barely knew the guy. But they were thick as thieves, and when he had Simon, who I'm not defending on this, but if you had Simon, Hollis, Izzo, D'Antonio pulling in the same direction with no funny business on the board of trustees, everybody pulling in the same direction there, you saw what Michigan State had. You saw the success, football, basketball. And it was outstanding. One of the best two-sport programs in the country. So, usually when we said everything at Michigan State needs to be pulled in the same direction, I always took that to mean board of trustees, president, athletic director, football coach, basketball coach, primarily. And what happens, and you just take for granted that there won't be a problem with people pulling in the same direction on the coaching staff. I'm not going to name names or even position groups or whatever. But chemistry used to be a strong suit. It's no longer a strong suit. And it'll be real hard to fix it. Sometimes you need fresh ideas, fresh blood. So that's why I say I'm not only expecting it, but I think it's needed. And if it does not happen, I'd be like, well, either D'Antonio thinks he can fix it, or I'm sure he's aware of it, or he's had to fill in the blank on that one. So we'll see. Fill in the blank as in, I don't want to say inattentive manager. I don't want to say on cruise control, but I would be surprised and frankly, do I want to say disappointed? What word do I say? If I say disappointed, that sounds like I'm a rah-rah guy hoping for the best and all this stuff. I don't know. That would be a sign that D'Antonio is not as maybe as forward thinking, as aggressive as he was back when he let Ted Gill go, which was uncomfortable. Turned out to be a constructive decision, tough decision, but that's my view from 10,000 feet. I'm not in the building. I've not seen it with my own eyes. So that's that. Rob South says, any word on a running back for this class? I just talked about Donovan Eglin a moment ago, and I think you can put him on commitment watch. Dark yellow moving toward a light orange on that one. Andrew Stoddard, hey boys, go green. Corey Robinson checking in. Corey Robinson checking in. What I'm reading now took place 40 minutes ago. I'm just now catching up with that. Jordan Simmons is taking an official visit to Michigan State on the 24th. I expect him in the class. Corey Robinson has spoken. Thank you, Corey. Old Tuck. Do you think Izzo will pare down the 4 spot? If so, who do you think is the odd man out? Kithier? Good question. Kithier only played, 7 minutes against Wisconsin. He was battling a flu at the time. He's not played all that well lately. He does a lot of little things well, running the court, scrambling around. But because he does those things well, the other power forwards see that. They are emulating that. Malik Hall playing hard. Got a good knee bend. He's down and ready away from the ball. No bad habits on defense. Izzo still gets a little bit bothered with him once per game, it seems. But Malik Hall's got some strength. You see him. He moves well laterally, playing some good ball screen defense. Had a nice 15-footer against Wisconsin. Had a real nice putback on the boards against Wisconsin. I liked Malik Hall. I thought Malik Hall grew that day. I thought Gabe Brown grew. I thought Aaron Henry got back on track a little bit. Rocket Watts grew. Julius Marble, playing better. Did well in practice today. Julius Marble can do some things defensively that Kithier cannot do. He's taller, he's wider, he's stronger. In terms of battling someone on a post, there's a lot of good big men in the Big Ten. Sticks over at Maryland. Real nice turnaround jumper against, was it Purdue they beat this weekend? Looked good. And you've seen the other big men that that are in the Big Ten. A lot of them. They've dealt with a few of them already. You're going to have big guys, good ones, coming to bat from Ohio State, Maryland, Iowa. So more are coming down the pike. So Marble can give Michigan State more girth, more strength on defense, something that's hurt Kithier against some teams. Kithier's played the 5 for Michigan State. He's more of a 4, and he can face up and shoot okay. They've not asked him to do that. Does a good job getting open spots for little layups. Not as many of those lately. But he can do some things. He might be out of position a little bit. They're asking him to be a 5. He's a 4, but they've been playing Bingham at the 4. This was interesting what I saw in the Wisconsin game. Late in the game, Michigan State's up by about 15. They ran a play that they always run. Ball screen, roll, replace. So ball screen, point guard, 5-man, the center, sets the screen, rolls. When he rolls, the 4 pops out. Roll, replace. Third of the replace, the 4-man, A.J. Granger, 3-pointer, boom. Adrian Payne, 3-pointer, boom. Kenny Goins, 3-pointer, boom. That's how those four men, stretch 4, get those 3-pointers in the Michigan State system. A lot of teams run that. They ran that a few times last year with Xavier Tillman as the 4 coming off the bench. This year, every time they've run screen roll replace with Xavier Tillman on the floor, he's been the 5. He's been the center. He didn't play as much center last year. This year, he's played all center. Very good as the roll man. Very good roll, catch, finish, those type of things. Late in the Wisconsin game, they ran screen roll replace, but they inverted it. They had Marcus Bingham setting the screen as the 5-man. Marcus Bingham rolled, and Xavier Tillman ran the replace. Got it back to him for a 3-pointer. I can't remember if he made it or not. The important thing is they ran the play for Tillman in the Kenny Goins role. They're up by 15, 5 minutes to go. That's when a lot of coaches just sit back, drink a Sprite, watch the action. Although that game wasn't quite out of reach yet. No matter how much time's left, sometimes in a blowout situation late in the game, you can get into Izzo's mind to see what he's thinking. Because the things they work on, the plays they run late in a game, sometimes are things they're working on as a team for the long term. Maybe they'll run a play to Aaron Henry to try to get him off. This time they ran a play to Xavier Tillman as the 4-man. So to answer your question, Old Tuck, what will they do to pare down the 4? Well, I think on offense at times, don't discount the possibility of Tillman becoming the range shooting 4, and they need that. All of Izzo's Final Four teams have had a stretch 4 that can make 3-pointers, except 2001. Last year, in October, November, December, I said over and over, they have to have a stretch 4. I say that every year. Last year, the only guy with a realistic chance to become that guy was Kenny Goins. And Kenny Goins had not been that guy to that point in his career. He'd been a good rebounder, scored a little bit here and there, but had not been a consistent shooting threat. He became one. You know that. The rest is history. Izzo's looking for a new one. Bingham was a guy they had hopes for. He has attempted a number of 3-pointers this year, enough to know that he's not the 35+% 3-point shooter they need him to be. And that shot is not a consistent looking shot. And Izzo said they've looked at practice with Marcus Bingham. They've looked at practice video with him, and they've shown him all the shots that he's missed in practice, to quote Izzo today. So Bingham has the green light to shoot that once in a while. But he's not a guy you're going to run screen roll replace to with 30 seconds to go to win a game. Can Tillman be that guy? Because a lot of times that's what's open. That's the difficult thing for a defense to guard, because that's the last frontier. That's the last shell in the shell game. They first have to make sure that Winston is out of the lane. They have to make sure they guard the roll man. These days, you have to make sure you have to get out on Gabe Brown and maybe Aaron Henry. We'll wait and see on that. And you're rotating, and you're adding an extra guy, and you're rotating, and that's why a lot of times the 4-man, AJ Granger, Adrian Payne, Kenny Goins, it's a reason that becomes open sometimes. So Michigan State needs somebody to hit that shot. Tillman, maybe. I think Kithier could do that later in his career, but right now, I think he's more of a natural 4. But as you know, Malik Hall hit the 3-pointer off that look 3 times against Seton Hall. That's why they beat Seton Hall. It hasn't been a 3-point threat since. But I don't sleep on Malik Hall. I think he could get better as the year goes along. Worried about him with the freshman wall, which is coming. Speaking of which, with Rocket Watts, with him missing 3 weeks, does he have less of a freshman wall situation? Maybe so. I don't know. But at the 4, it's still to be determined. I think that's interesting that they had Bingham setting the screen with all of his size, with all of Bingham's size. On the screen roll high feed, even screen roll duck down to him, just flat out rolling it to him. They've not probed that option much, and I think there's something there. And, today in practice, Tillman, Bingham, working on those post moves. Tillman said after, can't remember which game it was. I think the Purdue game. He felt that when he was in the post, his post moves were not varied enough, so he's going to work on it. So we saw in the most recent game against Wisconsin, he got it. 2 shuffle dribbles back the other way. You saw some more of a plan to his post game. And the 2 shuffle dribbles back to the other shoulder, the old Andre Hudson move. Bingham working on that now also. So that is still under construction. They need a 4-man to hit those stretch, to be a stretch 4, hit the 3-pointer, especially on screen roll replace. And if Bingham can become more of a threat as a screen roll man, as a 5, that could make Tillman the 4. Something to watch as the season progresses. You heard it here first. All right, Hayden Vischer. How many of the recent names offers of 2020 do you expect to be in this class? Corey Robinson says Eglin, the running back, and Josiah Robinson, the defensive end from Groveport Madison, were both offered recently. Both are very strong possibilities to be Spartans. Great info from Corey there, and I would agree. Old Tuck has some questions there. Who do you think we lean on as the backup point guard down the stretch, Lawyer or Frosty? Well, Lawyer and Frosty are the same person. Lawyer and Frosty are the same person. Frosty is Lawyer. You mean Rock or Frosty? Rock or Frosty? Sounds like something you'd order at Dairy Queen. Let's see. Lawyer's getting better. Lawyer looks like he's lost a couple pounds. He's moving a little quicker, moving a little more free and easy. That 16, 17 footer he hit against Wisconsin was terrific. Quick release, pure, confident, on time, in rhythm. Didn't second guess anything. He's hit a lot of 3-pointers this year. Some of them end a shot clock, some of them loose ball situations, some of them wide open. This was a case of him looking like a legit shooting guard, getting an open window and cashing it in and looking capable of doing it. Wisconsin tried to post him up, which should be his weakness. Wisconsin posts up guards more than anybody in the Big Ten. He withstood it, played a lot of minutes. I think Lawyer is the backup point guard. But they're going to bring Rocket along. They're going to continue to bring him along to do that because that's in his future. And he did some good things at the point. And he did something real well with a pass. Was it today in practice or the game? I get it mixed up a little bit, but he's coming along. I don't think they want to put too much on Rocket's plate. He's still learning. He had that week off or that month off. But they want to keep him fresh at point guard. He will be the point guard if they play an opponent, which could happen if they get deep into March. An opponent against whom they don't feel comfortable playing Lawyer on defense. You might see an opponent that they don't feel like Lawyer can guard anybody on the floor. In that case, Watts stays on the floor, and Watts is the backup point guard for 2 minutes a half. Because when you get that deep into March, TV timeouts are longer. You can play players more minutes. But for the most part, in most games, I think it's going to remain Lawyer. Let's go back to football. Find another question here. Let's see. We've been going for an hour or so. Let's try to get through these a little quicker. I've gone on some long soliloquies already. Try to limit those for the rest of the time. Let's see. Hayden V8 out of Grand Rapids, Michigan says, outside of the quarterback competition, what are you most looking forward to watching in the spring game and the spring practices? Number one, I would say defensive ends. With Willikis moving on, they need more help at defensive end. So Jacob Panashuk took a step last spring. Most of it carried over to the season, but he did not have the season I thought he would have. Panashuk's got to get back on it. Michael Fletcher played a little bit, retained redshirt status. I know he played a little bit at the end of the Michigan game, maybe a little bit here and there. Now, I didn't see him enough to gather an opinion on him. And we won't see him during spring practice because they're not going to let us watch much practice. We'll talk to coaches. They'll tell us what they think. And we have to try to put that up against the BS meter. Not that they're trying to BS us, but they try to utilize media to motivate their players. And if they think a player is trying hard, they'll say good things about him in the media, which might mean they think he's going in the right direction, but it might not mean he's going to be a great player. And we're always trying to figure those things out, engage those things. Michael Fletcher needs to come around. Jack Camper needs to come around. Camper's a guy that, man, when you watched him early last season, he showed some things and then was injured. And then in the spring sat out, I think, his second straight spring for the most part. Never got any traction this year. Continued to be bothered by the injuries. Jack Camper needs to take it up a major level. He's done it in the past. They need that. So in the spring, looking at Camper, looking at Panashuk, looking at Fletcher. Okay, Adam Burgorst, does he stay at tight end or does he go play defensive end? We know what Drew Beasley is. Drew Beasley's pretty solid. He can play functional defensive end. Good enough up to Michigan State standards to be a starter. He has started for Michigan State, but can he start for 12 games? You would like for somebody to surpass him, whether it be Jack Camper or Fletcher. But defensive end is one of the main areas I'll be looking at this spring. There are others, but that's one that I'll mention today. Question, what is this, number 3? We'll call it number 3. Timmy, 1086 out of Eaton Rapids, Michigan. If Kevin Jarvis is back to full health, do you project him playing tackle or moving back inside to right guard, assuming everyone is fairly healthy? Do I see him playing tackle or guard? He was supposed to play tackle this year, got injured. He might have even played tackle for a couple of years, or a couple of games, right? Yeah, he did play tackle for a couple of games, got injured against Arizona State, out for the year. Question is, if he's back to full health, do I see him going inside or outside? I liked the way A.J.R. Curry looked at the end of the year. More so in pass protection than run blocking. He needs to bring his run blocking along. But our Curry's going to be a senior with a chance, if he plays well, if they want him, a guy you could bring back for a 6th year. They've not applied for it, but it's something he'd be a candidate for. So I think you continue to ride out our Curry at left tackle. Jordan Reed, the last month of the season, played well. Number 9, I forgot his name already. The defensive end for Wake Forest is an NFL player. One of the best defensive ends in the ACC. I think he might have gotten loose once, maybe drew one holding call. But for the most part, Reed and our Curry did a really good job in pass protection against number 9. Number 9 did not make much noise at all, and he's a terrific defensive end. That was good pass protection by those tackles. Reed, not perfect, but his slope of improvement is positive. He's a functional right tackle, Big Ten level right tackle. Cole Chewins, he's hoping he can come back. We won't know more about him for several more months, weeks. But if our Curry improves his run blocking, stays healthy, Reed continues to improve, I think you can move Jarvis back to right guard and have an athletic right guard there. I think Jarvis was at left tackle mostly out of necessity. I think he moves back in to answer the question. Question number 4, 84, Spartan out of Lake Fenton. Oh, I'm not going to answer this question because it was a great question. He was asking about underrated reaches in in-state and out-of-state recruits. Underrated and reaches. I'm going to table that one because I've got to look. I got to do more. I got to do more research on that in order to offer a somewhat intelligent response. So good question, 84 Spartan out of Lake Fenton, but I can't answer it this week. Remind me next time. Or actually, I should just make a note of that beforehand because usually I ask these questions and I only get a few minutes to think about them. If I paint myself into that corner next week, I'll make the same mistake. But it's a good question. Thanks for posting that. Question number 5, Deamber 3 from Parts Unknown. Deamber 3 from Parts Unknown. He asks, is Trayvon Morgan 6'7"? It's been reported elsewhere that he's that tall. Well, Trayvon Morgan, redshirt freshman wide receiver, sat out all season after getting injured. Reported at camp, injured soon thereafter. Was injured as a junior in high school. Paul Konerdijk very astutely on signing day said he liked Trayvon Morgan's potential, but Konerdijk did the big feature on Morgan after he committed, did some research on him, and he said I'd be impressed, surprised if he manages to stay healthy in college. Not quite a Kyle Arns situation in terms of chronic injuries, but have to be concerned about it. But I did mention on this podcast and elsewhere that Trayvon Morgan, when I've seen him in the hallways at the Duffy Doherty building, also known as the Scandalaris Center, that Trayvon Morgan is the largest wide receiver I've ever seen. He's just a big human being. Had a great senior season, achieved 4-star status from Rivals.com, has a lot of ability. He's got to stay healthy. And as a piggyback to that question, Spartunes89 from Marshall, Michigan, says, speaking of Trayvon Morgan, what are you hearing about him? Any chance he can make an impact next year? Well, I just gave you some background on him. I've not heard anything yet. Spring practice will be starting 6 weeks, maybe 7 weeks, 8 weeks. So that's someone I'd like to ask D'Antonio about if and when he ever has another press conference. Last year, when D'Antonio, when he announced those changes to his coaching staff, he had a press conference. This time, if there are changes, will he have a press conference or will he just send out a press release? Not sure, but if he has a press conference, note to self, ask about Trayvon Morgan. So, no, I've not heard anything about him. Didn't hear anything about him at the end of the season. Did not hear whether he got on the scout team field at the end of the season. Haven't heard. And, frankly, we didn't get a lot of interview opportunities in the postseason. So it's usually we try to do some extensive stuff on players like that are deep reserve, young guys. We did some information. We did some stories on some of those guys, but didn't get around to asking about Trayvon Morgan. We'll go ahead and clear these questions from the mailbag portion, then a few more basketball. Then I'll clear the questions in the chat area, and we'll call it a podcast. Sound good? Appreciate everybody fielding questions. Appreciate everybody joining in and having a good time here at the podcast. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. And a little late in the game to do this, but if you're not a SpartanMag.com subscriber, become one. We need more people over there. The more the merrier. I think right now, if you go over there, you can subscribe, get the first month free. Then after that, it's like $8.60 a month. Basically the price of 2 lattes, maybe, if you're a latte drinker. Depending on what town you live in, maybe it's a pint of beer at your favorite establishment. Maybe less per month. SpartanMag.com, we need more members. We're exclusive. We're not exclusive. We're inclusive. I spoke wrong. We're inclusive. Come on in, friends. Spartan friends. Join the fun. Become a Magger. All right, Jay Bannon from Sterling Heights, Michigan. Do you see MSU taking anyone from the transfer portal? I have read they talked to Costello, the quarterback from Stanford, and King, the quarterback from Houston, to be a quarterback this fall. I do not know if they have talked to anyone else. There are also several DL and tight ends that may be able to help. Jay Bannon, you're right. Michigan State talked a little bit with Costello, but got out of that. I think they looked at Costello, and I'm not sure he was the style of quarterback that they see themselves going with for the future or even next year. King, I don't know if Michigan, I think Las Vegas listed Michigan State as one of the favorites for King. I never really got that. King is a good runner, good athlete. Not sure he fits with what Michigan State would have done. Would they have taken him? Yeah, probably. Yeah, because it's probably better than the unknowns that they have. But King, of course, is no longer on the board. He is going to the University of Miami. Michigan State will play against him next fall in Spartan Stadium. Quarterbacks, there's some new speculation about Chase Bryce, who has entered the transfer portal from Clemson. He's been the backup quarterback for Trevor Lawrence at Clemson for a couple of years. Has had a lot of mop-up duty, mop-up experience in 2 years as the backup. He's from Loganville, Georgia. Michigan State offered him early as a recruit, and Michigan State was strongly in the running for him as a recruiting option back then. So when he enters the portal, because he knows Michigan State so well, it's natural that Michigan State would have a chance to get in on him. And he's only been in the portal for a short time. There's been some indications that Michigan State's ears are open. I've not heard anything more extensive than that from inside sources about where Michigan State might stand with Bryce. Would not shock me if Michigan State gets into that chase. But like I posted on the bunker today, Bryce is going to want to go to a school where he is more guaranteed that he'll be the starter. Can Michigan State give him that guarantee? Probably not. Can they guarantee that he's better than what Michigan State already has? I don't know. I've got to go back and look at some of his film. And you know what? I'll bet that's what Michigan State's doing right now. They're probably looking at that mop-up film. They already saw a little bit of him against Wake Forest because he played against Wake Forest. They looked at Wake Forest's film. So Michigan State knew him well as a recruit. They've kept an eye on him. They're probably looking at that film now. And if they arrive at the determination that they would anticipate that he would beat out Lombardi, Day, and Peyton Thorne right now, would not shock me if Michigan State gets involved in that one. Wouldn't shock me. If they do get involved with him, that being said, I'm not guaranteeing that Chase Bryce is a difference maker. Hunter Johnson left Clemson last year as a former 5-star recruit, went to Northwestern, sat out a year, began the year as a starter, and was dreadful. He was terrible. He was the worst starting quarterback in the Big Ten. You guys know that. So that doesn't necessarily mean that Chase Bryce is that bad. We've seen in mop-up duty, Chase Bryce is better than Hunter Johnson. That's probably one of the reasons Hunter Johnson left, not just because Trevor Lawrence was there. So, Clemson had a quarterback that they won a national championship with, or went to the national championship game with, that transferred to Missouri last year after Trevor Lawrence beat him out. Is Chase Bryce in that category? Different type of player, but an intriguing one. Chase Bryce, an interesting guy. Michigan State has a past with him. When Michigan State recruited him as a quarterback, at that time, Brad Salem was quarterback's coach, and Dave Warner was the coordinator. Dave Warner was the primary recruiter in Georgia. Dave Warner is still around. Now he's the quarterback's coach. Now Salem is the offensive coordinator. So those two things are still familiar with Chase Bryce, although they flip-flopped. So that part of it and the opportunity might appeal to him. He probably had a chance to watch Brian Lewerke a few times over the years to see what they were doing, and he probably saw the changes they made in their offense this year. So, could be a marriage that works. It's worth watching. But, like I said, I suspect Michigan State's looking at that film right now. Will they go full bore for it? I'll check with some sources. Some things have gotten out of the Scandalaris Center recently, like information about transfer portal quarterbacks and things of that nature. When that happens, it wouldn't surprise me if D'Antonio tightens down things a little bit more so that sourcing becomes a little tighter. We shall see. As far as the portal goes, I heard that running back was a possibility, but if they get the kid from Texas, then that would be out. I've heard linebacker's a possibility, but I've not seen anything like that. I would have thought offensive line or tight end would have been a possibility, but I've not heard or seen anything about Michigan State involvement in the portal with those. Corey Robinson has heard that Michigan State's been monitoring quarterbacks and even safeties. So, but we've not seen any movement in that regard. As far as the portal goes, I was listening to Tom Luganbill on Sirius Satellite Radio recently, and he said that there are 1,100 players in the transfer portal. 1,100. And less than 10% of those, have landed at a new school in a scholarship situation. Now, some of those still are making their minds up, but a lot of these transfer portal players are going to end up without scholarships, which is what Izzo warned about many times. J.D. Gerbert from Hazlet, Michigan, located just outside of Lansing, Michigan, says, any info on, he's going to hockey. Can we do that? I said these were football questions, but we're going to go to hockey. He says, any info on wooden stick here, going old school. Should have had my gloves here. Look out. Any info on Danton Cole working with Izzo and D'Antonio over the last few years? I know Izzo gave money to Munn, the Munn refurbishment alterations, whatever you want to call it. But you always hear about Izzo, D'Antonio, Hollis working so well together in the old days. I was wondering if you have any anecdotes about Cole fitting in with the big two. Izzo, of course, donated to the refurbishment at Munn, which is extensive. I've seen Danton Cole at a couple of basketball games. He was at the Duke game. And he was kind of grumpy about that in a good-natured way. He's like, man, 9:30 start. That was a 9:30 start, wasn't it? He's like, gosh, that's a late start, but I'll be there. That's what he said. I've seen him there. There was something I can't remember. When they have hockey recruits on campus, they go over to basketball and they meet Izzo if he's in town. They meet D'Antonio. Those guys work together when they can. But in terms of Cole helping those two, there's only so much that hockey coaches can do to. There's not much a hockey coach can do to help basketball or football all that much. But yeah, they get along great, and Cole's got it going. He's got some progress right now. There's another hockey question from Sherlock out of Sterling Heights. He said, the hockey team, Michigan State hockey team, is 1 point out of first place in the Big Ten. Are you surprised? Am I? Yes. And he says, I am surprised. And he says, we play our top competition in the next couple of weeks. Think we can take them, Ohio State and Penn State. Michigan State plays Penn State this weekend. Penn State, first place in the Big Ten. 1 point ahead of Michigan State. Ohio State is tied with Michigan State for second place. They're each 1 point out of first place. Ohio State plays at Minnesota this weekend. For a few minutes this weekend, Michigan State was in first place in the Big Ten. After they beat Wisconsin on Friday, late Friday night, they were in first place, but then Penn State got an extra point, scoring in overtime to beat Michigan, I think is the way it went. So Michigan State was in first place for a little bit. I want to say that's the latest they've been in first place since the advent of the Big Ten. Someone said that they were in first place for a minute late in the season when one of Comley's years. I don't know. But, yeah, I think Michigan State is 8-5-1. Yeah, Michigan State's 8-5-1 in the Big Ten. And overall, they're 500. And there's a lot of 500 records in college hockey because, there's so many there's so many two-game sets. There's parity in a lot of sports, but in hockey, of course, there's parity. And then to ask a team to beat a team again the second night, it's hard to do. And Michigan State beat Wisconsin convincingly on Friday, lost on Saturday. It's a 1-1 game. They got scored upon with 2 minutes to go, 2-1, then empty netter 3-1. Same thing a week earlier against Minnesota. Michigan State dominated the first game. Then in the second game, they were down 1-0 on the second shift of the game. And it stayed 1-0 for 58 minutes. Michigan State pulled the goalie. Minnesota scored again, 2-0. Michigan State unable to get the sweep. On that 2-on-1 early in the game against Minnesota, Sasana, a good offensive-minded defenseman, came in on the play. And it looked to me like a forward should have rallied back to help where the defenseman went in, but he didn't. He gave up a 2-on-1. They scored a goal. But am I surprised? Yes. And Dan Cole's not acting like he's surprised. He's like, yeah, we knew we were going to be better. We knew we'd be tough to beat and all these things. But maybe the surprise is that 8-4-2 leads the Big Ten. Maybe it's not a surprise. Actually, Ohio State is first place. Penn State's tied for second. I misspoke that. Ohio State's 8-4-2. They go to Minnesota. I don't want to talk too much about hockey because I know some people don't want me to get stuck on hockey, but Dan Cole, very confident, knew they'd be better. Maybe that's just hockey speak for him to not admit that he's surprised. Maybe he doesn't want his players to think that. But I'm surprised. I know my man Neil Koepke's a little bit surprised. He didn't anticipate that necessarily this year. So they've gotten excellent goaltending from Letherman. He's taken it up a notch. Kodorenko, the big center on the first line, he's a workhorse. Lewandowski's doing his thing. Saliba's up on the first line now. He's a senior, doing a good job. Defenseman is the big area of improvement. Last year, Michigan State had a freshman on each of the three defenseman pairings. This year, there's no freshman on the defensive pairings. Last year, the Krieger twins were freshmen. They played on two different pairings. Now they're on the same pairing, and they're playing well together. Danton Cole was asked today what areas of the team have been kind of, unsung heroes in terms of developing behind the scenes or that have really helped raise the tide for Michigan State. And he said the 4 defensemen, Krieger, Tommy Miller, and Boutros Ghafari. Ghafari's been a big hitter for a couple years, getting more and more playing time now. Miller's playing better. I've not really noticed that. I'll take his word for it on that. He also mentioned Josh Jager, who I've mentioned on this podcast a few times. He's a freshman, a forward, number 23, rugged, pain in the rear to play against. Roll it all together with a good goalie. And one area of special teams is really good. Is it the penalty kill? Can't remember. But it's been fun. And this weekend, Michigan State's playing Penn State at home, 2 second-place teams. If Michigan State gets a sweep, Ohio State splits, Michigan State will come out of it first place. Michigan State's in the top 20. I've been hungry for a meaningful hockey series at Munn Ice Arena for seems like 10 years. There's going to be one this weekend, and I might be there on Saturday. I got to check my schedule. But it's fun. They're fun to watch. They work their tails off. They're heading in the right direction. They're fired up. So that's going to be fun. Now, they have to get over a hump. Dominated Minnesota in day one, didn't get the sweep. Dominated Wisconsin, didn't get the sweep. Played in the GLI. They were leading Michigan Tech, winning the game. Gave up a couple goals in the third period. A 2-1 lead went to 3-2. They lose that game. Should have won the GLI. Could have won the GLI. So at some point, you split with Northern Michigan way back at the beginning of the season. At some point, these splits and missed opportunities have got to get on their nerves. You got to get some sweeps, not only to win the Big Ten, but to get yourself into a situation where you can get into the NCAA tournament. They're borderline right now. They keep getting splits. It's going to be hard to do it. Penn State's a very good team. They sweep them, they'll jump in the pairwise. So big weekend for Michigan State. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm expecting a lot of people to be over at Munn Ice Arena. Question number 9, last question on football. Then we'll go a couple basketball and then finish out the chat questions. Duffy79 from Detroit. Who do you see on the defensive line next year? And have you heard anything about the Slade kid who was injured at the beginning of the season? The Slade kid was Zach Slade, defensive end. No, I've not heard anything about him. He's out for the year. When players are out for the year, usually they don't get back on the field in the spring. They usually hold them out. And I'm kind of expecting that to be the case. And I forgot to mention Zach Slade when I was talking about defensive ends earlier in this podcast. Somebody on the chat area probably mentioned it. I've not seen it yet, but if you did, thank you. Forgot about Zach Slade. I also didn't mention incoming freshman. We'll just wait and see on that. And also the question was about what I was going to look at this spring. And let me see if I can find early enrollees. Let's see. Halliday, Hightower, Snow, King, Stevens, Lockett, Gross, corner. I'm not sure defensive end is going to be coming in. So that's beside the point. Anyway, who do I see in the D-line next year? Defensive ends, we've talked about them already. Jacob Panashuk, Jack Camper, Michael Fletcher, Drew Beasley, Berghorst, Zach Slade, and Chase Klein has had his hand in the dirt a little bit, usually in pass rush situations. I don't think he'll be coming every down defensive end. But who do I see in the defensive line? Panashuk, Camper, Fletcher, Beasley. Beasley's proven, Panashuk's proven. If the season started next Saturday, I think Beasley would be starting. He's functional. But you want Camper to beat him out. Just because Beasley is good, so he's functional, but you want something better than functional. Can Beasley improve and go from functional to good? Possibly. But I'm expecting Panashuk, Beasley, and it's got to be Camper. He's got to get in there. And Fletcher developing. Berghorst, we don't know. There's some players there. Unproven, though. Defensive tackle, Naquan Jones. Naquan Jones played really well in the bowl game. Took it up a notch. He looked like he's getting that flywheel going, getting that engine started for a big senior year. I think Naquan Jones, I'm not sure he's always been the most driven guy. I'm not sure he's always been the guy with the brightest pilot light in terms of, I don't know, effort. I don't know if that's the right word. But now that he's the guy, Naquan Jones has got to take a jump, and I think he will. So I think it's Naquan Jones and Jacob Slade. Jacob Slade had a good game in the bowl game. And you see that sometimes with young players who've gotten their feet wet throughout the course of the season. They take a month off, get healthy, or a couple weeks off, get healthy, practice, come back, get a month older. Sometimes 1 month makes a difference when a kid's 19. Boom! Jacob Slade was good in that bowl game. He had a sack. He was good. Naquan Jones, Jacob Slade, that's a good defensive tackle tandem. That's good. Good. Not dominant, but it's good. Deshaun Mallory has to keep getting down in weight a little bit more. He's gotten on the field a little bit. Need him to come alive. Need him to come around. Might be forgetting somebody. Need 3. That would be 3. And you have to keep the fingers crossed no one gets hurt. I can't think of who 4 would be. 4 or 5. Didn't do enough homework. I could look it up now, but I don't want to bore you with that. Back to basketball. Spefton from East Lansing says Cassius Winston. Jalen Hunt. Thanks, Corey. Jalen Hunt. Yeah, boy. Jalen Hunt, they're excited about him. Had a good season on the scout team. Traveled, got a little bit of playing time in one of those games. Jalen Hunt, yes, he's going to be very, very good candidate to be in that playing group. A good candidate to be the number 3 defensive tackle. Yes, Jalen Hunt. Thank you. Yes, that makes a difference. I knew I was forgetting somebody. And yeah, I've not witnessed the Jalen Hunt magic, but they're excited about him. All right, Spefton from East Lansing says Cassius Winston has looked very average in the last 2 games. Was this a blip, or are there concerns going forward? Thanks, by the way, Corey Robinson, for helping us out with this. Appreciate all your insight with football recruiting and assists like that. Couldn't do it without you. Recruiting rep. Let's try to have one at the end of the week here. Thursday, there's basketball. Maybe tomorrow. Keep your ears on, Corey. Appreciate everything you're doing. Cassius Winston. Spefton says, also, do you see someone else emerge as the third-headed monster to complement Cassius and Xavier? All right, as far as Winston goes, he did struggle against Purdue. He did struggle against Wisconsin. Both teams were very physical with him, bumping him off the dribble, bump, 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 just enough not to get fouled. Very tactfully. So, and Purdue did a lot of great things in terms of just all over the court, denying the outlet to him after makes and misses, which I've never seen a team deny the outlet after missed shots. So, Purdue misses, Michigan State gets the rebound, and Purdue still denies the outlet. A one-man full court press against one position. Going back to Gene Cady, they've always denied the outlet after made baskets to slow down Michigan State's blitz counter break, but I've not seen a team do it after missed shots. You rarely see any basketball teams press after missed shots at any level. I can think of Manastee's girls' high school basketball team circa 1991. They did it. Not many others. Arkansas, maybe 40 Minutes of Hell would do it a little bit. Anyway, so Winston was 3 for 12 against Wisconsin. 5 turnovers, 0 for 3 from three-point range. Izzo said there's going to be good days and bad days. So I don't know if that bleeds into this. I don't know. But he'll be back. Come on, he'll be back. He'll be all right. Looked good in practice today. So the third-headed monster, I think it's going to rotate. You know, Xavier Tillman and Winston are the two-headed monsters. It was supposed to be Joshua Langford. You know what happened with him. Aaron Henry was supposed to be the guy. He's been inconsistent, but I like what he's done. Like what he did in the last game in terms of his aggressiveness. Looking for that medium range shot. 1 out of 2 from three-point range. Took 10 shots. Aaron Henry, that's good. 5 out of 10, 13 points. That's progress for Aaron Henry to look for a shot. Get 10 good shots off. Gabe Brown, 5 out of 5. From long range, transition, good stuff. You know, Aaron Henry, that medium range, change of direction. And Gabe Brown, he was 5 out of 5 and turned down a good shot once. There's a time they ran a pin down for him, down screen at the block. Comes off it, curls into the lane, catches it on a curl, goes up. Could have had a 12-foot shot and instead passed it to somebody, and I think it was fumbled. I don't know if it was a turnover or what, but whoever he threw it to didn't get a shot look. But Brown had that shot. They're like, Gabe, that's your shot. Take it. It's good that he's a giver. It's good that he's thinking of others. But as he scores more and more, he can start looking for more of those. And that's one of the few times I've seen Michigan State run a play in the half court for Gabe Brown as the first option in medium range. So that's a new frontier they've not hit yet. They've done that for Aaron Henry. I mean, Gabe Brown is jumping well. You know that. Shot release looks good. So that is still under construction, and that's a positive. So in some games, I think it's going to be Gabe Brown. Some games, Aaron Henry. Rocket Watts doing what he did. I think that's just icing on the cake. When he can make 3 3-pointers, not something you can go to and expect to become a third head of a three-headed monster at this point. It's supposed to be Aaron Henry. I still think he's going to do it. But now I think he's got I don't want to say competition for that or a running mate, but Gabe Brown is coming along quickly to take a little pressure off of Aaron Henry. That's a good thing. Need some more depth there. Rocket Watts coming off the bench. Lawyer coming off the bench. That's enough to make it work as long as nobody else gets hurt, right? All right, question from Kirby out of Clearmont, Florida. Also from Sanford Lake, Michigan. So he's in Clearmont, Florida now because he winters down there. Good for you, Kirby. He says, gun to your head, how many losses will win the Big Ten basketball regular season this year? He says, we already know you are picking MSU to win outright or tie. I don't remember picking Michigan State to win outright or tie. I'm not saying they won't. I don't remember giving a prediction on that. I'm not big on predictions. I don't make predictions. I give expectations of what I'm expecting is going to happen sometimes, but I don't do predictions. Predictions, I'm not good enough to predict anything. Sometimes I've got a feel on some things. I might do what's called a prediction, but basically I'll give an expectation, and that I don't want to say that fully illustrates the picture, but it provides some lines, and then the game is played, and you can color in the rest of it. But sometimes my expectation colors how the outcome turns out. I'm expecting number 9 for Wake Forest to be a good pass rusher. When Michigan State blocks well against him, that's a development and shouldn't go unnoticed. Let's see. Gun to my head, how many losses? I don't know. I've not looked at the schedule. I think Michigan State has favorable schedule, even though 9 of the last 15 are on the road. Izzo has said 5. That sounds good enough for me. That's Izzo math. So maybe it'll be 4. But if Michigan State doesn't get 4, if Michigan State might be the only team capable of going 16-4. If Michigan State doesn't go 16-4, I don't think anyone else does. So probably 5. I don't know. I'm not very good at that. People used to ask Heathcote that every single week when he used to do press conferences. And I'm not sure it's all that interesting, is it? But I appreciate Kirby down there in Florida. Good weather. Asking that question. All right. Ranger 410 says, what are the timetables for the Big Three in-state this year for 2021? Talking about basketball recruiting. Akins, Peter Brooks, and Kobe Buffkin. Akins from Farmington, Brooks from Detroit, Buffkin from Grand Rapids. What are the odds you would give us for each? Who is the main out-of-state guy that could pop to Michigan State first? Well, Izzo watched Akins and Pierre Brooks on Monday. Michigan State's done a really good job with Akins and Brooks and Buffkin. They're right there for any of them. Who have they decided is the guy they're going at full blast? I've not noticed, and they're not saying. And I don't know if they're telling any of those players. They like Akins and Brooks. They like both of them. Izzo's excited that Detroit is coming back, he said today, in terms of basketball talent. But he was a little bit bothered. I found it interesting for him to say. He was bothered when he went down to Detroit for Martin Luther King game Monday. And people came up to him and they're talking about, man, Rocket Watts is finally playing well. Hey, as if Michigan State. See, Izzo's got this defense mechanism. He's a little defensive because he thinks if you say something like that, then you must mean that you think that the coach was holding him back. And Izzo has to be aware of things like that because there's always people in players' ears about, man, they're holding you down. You should transfer. And there's people doing that all the time. So Izzo is paranoid about that. And he knows his business better than I do, so maybe he has every reason to be that way. So he goes to Detroit, and people come up to him and say, man, Rocket Watts is finally playing well. Hit 3 3-pointers. I mean, they remember Rocket Watts hitting 3 3-pointers, or hitting a lot of 3-pointers in high school, as if that was automatically going to carry over to college. So that's what Izzo has to deal with, and he smiles it off. He doesn't show them, those people, how much that stuff bothers him, but it bothers him. But bites his tongue, smiles, whatever. And he's down there recruiting. He's having fun recruiting in state again because there's players around. Michigan State's done well with all three. I think Buffkin might be below the other two a little bit. So is there room for both? Right now, there's not scholarship room for both. If Xavier Tillman goes pro after his junior year, then there's a little more room there. But odds of each, I'll just say I think Michigan State's the team to beat for all of them. University of Michigan recently offered Pierre Brooks, but I think State has shown those guys a lot of love. It's not like Xavier is going to come in and steal them because Michigan State's asleep at the switch. Michigan State's not asleep at the switch. They've done a good job getting those guys on campus, a good job showing them love by going and watching them play. So I would not anticipate those players all of a sudden committing elsewhere like a thief in the night. As has happened in the past, Michigan State may be caught asleep at the wheel with someone like Derek Walton. I don't think that'll happen this time. Michigan State's going to get at least one of them, I think. And they're all pretty good. I'm going to say Akins or Brooks is the best bet. Are they different enough for room for both? I don't know. And when could it happen? I don't know. Things can happen overnight. Things can happen. When Keith Appling committed, I didn't see that coming. Boom, it happened overnight. When Kyle Arns committed, didn't see that coming. Boom, it happened overnight. That could happen. Don't know. Michigan State's in good position, though. In terms of out-of-state recruits, the player with the best chance for Michigan State to get, Caleb First, the kid out of Fort Wayne, Indiana, Blackhawk Christian, number 31 player in the country, 6'8", stretch 4. Michigan State has as good a chance with him as anybody, perceived as the leader. He visited Michigan State for the Michigan game. I've played some message tag with him a little bit. He's excited about doing interviews about Michigan State. So Michigan State's in good shape with Caleb First, but I don't think he's in a hurry to commit anytime soon. I don't think. He's a junior, focusing on his junior year. Michigan State still has a good name down there at Blackhawk Christian, where Russell Byrd went. He's a different player than Russell Byrd. This guy's bigger. He's a different position. Last question, actually 2 more questions. From Ward 44, do you think Michigan State leads for Caleb First? I think I just mentioned that. I think Michigan State's in good shape. He was at the Michigan State-Purdue game at Purdue. That was not a pretty sight. So Purdue's trying to get in there. All right, another question from third-generation Spartan. He says, have you signed the wall by the locker rooms at Breslin Center? Do you know how that tradition started? No, I've not signed it. They've not asked me to, and I would not desecrate the walls of the Breslin Center with my signature. I think, some of the first signatures were basketball players. I think it was a time when Steve Smith was back, and that was I remember there were some new signatures. I remember someone might have signed it while Robert Traylor was visiting for a game once. So that tells you that would have been like 1994, 95, somewhere around there. I think Steve Smith was one of the first ones to sign. Then Kevin Willis, Respert, and Snow, and then former players have signed outside the locker room, and they've got a plexiglass protector over it. They signed the cinder block, their name with a black pen, protected by cinder block. That tradition carried over down the hall outside, like the entertainment area, for people that have played at Breslin for concerts. And there have not been a lot of concerts at Breslin in recent years. I got to change my power mode here. In the past, Breslin was on that concert circuit, but come to think of it, not many lately. I wonder if the casinos have cut into that. And when they've had concerts at Breslin, there's no alcohol. So somebody's not making money on that. I don't know how concert contracts go. They probably don't get a portion of the alcohol. I'm sure they don't. But anyway, there have not been many concerts lately. But if you walk up and down the halls, you'll see signatures on the cinder blocks. Reba McEntire, Carrie Underwood, Bob Seger, Def Leppard. Def Leppard has a very colorful cinder block signature. Elton John, I think. So there's some good ones. I'll have to look at that again and count up some of the others that I may have missed. So who started it? Probably Steve Smith. All right. That's all of those. Let's go to the chat area and wrap it up. Appreciate everybody participating, having fun here. Tell your friends about SpartanMag.com, the real SpartanMag.com, and also this podcast, usually on Tuesday nights. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. All right. Jesse Adams, Jesse from Mount Pleasant. Who would you say would be a better fit at quarterback next year, Chase Bryce or KJ Costello? I think Bryce, because Bryce runs it more. He sprinkles in the run. You see that in his statistics during mop-up time. I'll have to watch some more of his film. Costello, purely a pocket guy. For the direction Michigan State's going, I think Bryce is the better fit, although Costello is more experienced. Costello had some good moments this year. The year before, Costello has 6 or 7 or 8 300-plus yard games. He's had some games, but Costello is no longer involved with Michigan State. But you're asking who would be the better fit? I think it would be Bryce because he can run a little bit. That might sound stupid 12 months from now if Costello goes out and has a great senior season for LSU or something, and Bryce goes to Colorado State and doesn't do much. Maybe I'll sound stupid. I don't know. Wait. I'm trying to think what year is Chase Bryce. He might not be. I'll have to look to see if he's even available to play. I kind of put the cart ahead of the horse on that one. I apologize for that. Next subject. Old Tuck. Does Rocket remind you of Doug Davis or Rashi Johnson? Now that's Old Tuck just being a wise guy. Jesse Adams. If we were to get either of them to come in and join the team, that's the continuation of his question. Costello is out. I heard from sources that they've told him that they're not looking in that direction. That was 2 or 3 weeks ago. When you look at Costello's stats, maybe that's a little surprising, but maybe, I don't know. Maybe they just, even though he's not style-wise what they're looking for, that is kind of, when I reported on the bunker that Michigan State had backed off, I didn't think it was that big of a loss. Then I went back and researched some of the games he had, and Costello did have some pretty big games as a sophomore and a few as a junior. Any guess? This is Michael Maher. Any guesses on the first 2021 commit for football? I'll defer to Corey Robinson on that. He says, you can read what he says. 2021 is a tough one, as no one has a decision pending. The running back, Tyus the third. Trey, what's his last name? He's from Portage. D'Antonio just went and saw him yesterday morning. No offer yet. That's who he's talking about. Oh, he was offered tonight. It's possible. So Corey Robinson with information there. So I think his name, is it Trey Tyus? Yeah, Trey Tyus. Is a possibility. Jace Williams is another. All right, Kirk Baldwin. Does this mean we can get rid of Sheldon White now? Nice guy, but our recruiting and evaluation has been poor under him. I felt he was only brought on to secure Cody. I disagree that he was brought on only to secure Cody. I really don't think D'Antonio would go that route to bring in someone on staff just to get that player's son. I think that they were mutually exclusive. I think they liked Cody White and they liked Sheldon White. Cody White was pretty good, then injured, then pretty good again, then shaky, then good, setting up for an impact senior year. He's gone. Hurts him, hurts Michigan State. Sheldon White, it was written, Matt Wenzel did a good story in M Live today about the latest on, the Curtis Blackwell lawsuit. They're trying to get D'Antonio to report again for another hour, be deposed for another hour. D'Antonio and his legal staff are fighting it pretty aggressively, and they're talking in the press a little bit. And as part of D'Antonio's filing on that, it's been revealed that Michigan State outlined the reasons that they did not retain Blackwell or did not re-sign him. He was not fired, so there's no wrongful dismissal. One of the reasons was that Sheldon White, they had pegged as someone to come in and do that job instead of Blackwell. Well, he's been a lot different than Blackwell, and I would agree that Sheldon White, I've not seen a big splash that he's made. Just got called like I see it. And again, I'm not sure what went on with Cody White not getting all the information that maybe he should have looked into. So Michigan State lacked aggressiveness in Southeast Michigan last year in recruiting. That's based on some recruits I've talked to and just my observations. Michigan State coaches, if I'm wrong and you're watching this, you can fill me in. Let me know if I'm wrong. Kirk Baldwin, I already asked that one. Rob South, any word on a transfer quarterback? We've been through that. Also, there's not many quality transfer quarterbacks out there. Derek King out of Houston probably will have an impact at Miami. KJ Costello's out there. Jamie Newman from Wake Forest. You saw him. He was the best this year, going to Georgia. Everybody else, there's probably someone out there as good or better than Lombardi or Theo Day, maybe, but I've not looked at the whole list. But I listened to McElwain on Sirius Satellite Radio. He went through everybody, and he thought Newman was the best, and sure enough, he ended up at the best spot, which was Georgia, the best spot available. You saw Newman. Pretty good. Not great. That's what's out there this year. So people that have this idea that there's a nameless, faceless quarterback that can ride in on a white horse and save the day, like Justin Fields or Jalen Hurts or Joe Burrow, I'm not sure that guy exists this year. Doors Fan 91. Corey, how do you see 2022 quarterback Joey Silveri? Is he a Big Ten quarterback? And I see him as a kid who can give MSU a spark. I've not looked at Silveri's film yet. I think Corey has an answer below. Corey says Silveri is really good looking at an early stage. As far as a spark, probably too early to say, too far away still. I would agree with that. I think that's a prudent comment. Just because somebody is the first name out of the bag or one of the first names in terms of recruiting quarterback fame, sometimes those guys end up going to Eastern Michigan, it seems like. So wait and see with the summer camps. Once upon a time, there was, I like to pick the Malzone year. There was Malzone, the quarterback from Brother Rice, big name, loved Michigan State. Michigan State looked at him, came to camp. Michigan State just didn't pull the trigger. In the meantime, Brian Lewerke committed. They took Lewerke, and that was the smart thing to do. I also mentioned there was the kid that ended up going to Buffalo. Was it Tyree Jackson? No one had ever heard of the kid. And he was on the field at the same time as Malzone. And I was like, if you'd have told me that, and Malzone was committed to Michigan at the time, I said, if you'd have told me that Malzone is the no-name and Tyree Jackson is committed to Michigan, I would believe it. And I'd say, okay, that sounds right. They were both pretty good. They were different. But quarterbacks, I mean, Kirk Cousins showed up here and no one knew who he was. Looks pretty good. So we'll wait on quarterbacks a little bit. And I think Michigan State should wait. These are 2021s. Offering someone before camp, why would you do that? You know, nothing against him, but Michigan State offered Noah Listerman before he camped at Michigan State. Came to camp, didn't look good. Good kid, nothing against him. Came in as a committed guy. I don't think he ever played a snap at Michigan State. And he did not look good at camp. So, I'm not, some of those borderline guys offering them before camp. There was a defensive back out of Ohio, which is rare for Michigan State to miss an evaluation. I don't know, an Ohio DB, but there was one guy came in committed and didn't look very good and didn't do much at Michigan State. That's maybe 6 or 7 years ago. Silveri, I mean, if he's like Drew Henson or Ryan Van Dyke, yeah, you go ahead and offer and go for it. But, if not, you bring him into camp and do your evaluation then. That would be the way I would look at it. Colin Meaney says, why is our football recruiting so trash? We've been getting scrubs for the last 3 years. That's a deep question. Late in the podcast. Well, I think, there's other reasons, but, I don't think it's any secret that on the Michigan State staff, they don't really have those 1 or 2 or 3 like turbocharged recruiting guys. It would help if they did. Terry Samuel had a little trouble getting that engine going in Detroit a little bit. Has a chance to finish strong this year. Ricky White in Georgia. Jordan Simmons still to be signed. We'll see. So they're lacking that turbo type of guy. And last summer, or last spring, I think Michigan State, and I've said this before, I think they were late to the plate with in-state guys. And I think part of it was the shuffling of some of the coaches. I think with that shuffling, some recruiting responsibilities fell through the cracks for a while. They were late on Braden McGregor, late on Enzo Jennings. They were late on Penny Boone, maybe on purpose, I don't know. But they ended up going after Enzo Jennings, but it was too late. He was already heading toward Penn State. There were others. So you have to do well in state. You need to have some turbocharged recruiters. In Ohio, losing the Cincinnati linebacker to the Bearcats. Lost quarterback Evan Prater to the Bearcats. Lost the defensive end to the Bearcats. So Ohio recruiting, it's been solid, but lost some traction there. Add that up. A couple of those guys, Raheem Anderson, what was his name? A couple of 4 stars. I mean, you get those guys, some of those guys, and you've got a class that's borderline top 25, makes a difference. Recruiting is so trash, you say. I wouldn't go that far. I'm not sure. True, Michigan State had to get some plan Bs, and right now at the 11th hour, there's some reaches they're going for. They're in with this tight end who I think is a reach. The running back in Texas looks solid, but that's like a plan D guy, So there have been times when Michigan State has gotten some 11th hour guys, of course, legendarily, that have turned out to be good, like Le'Veon Bell, Darqueze Dennard, turned out to be great. But 3 years ago, 11th hour, Larice Nelson, Emmanuel Flowers, Trey Person. Those guys were no star, 2 stars. Trey Person got on the field early and has kind of plateaued. Might need him to be the safety next year. But usually, if you're bringing in mid-major guys at the 11th hour, it's not a good sign. It's a tough way to get any hay out of those type of guys. Credit to Michigan State. Evaluation-wise, going after Ennis Rackshaw out of Texas. They offered him in December, 6'3" corner out of Duncanville, Texas. And they offered. A week later, the Hurricanes offer. A couple days later, Georgia offers. A few days later, Alabama offers. All in December and January. So That was like Exhibit A of Michigan State looking at a recruit, an unknown recruit, offering. And you could just tell that when Michigan State offered this 6'3" corner out of Detroit, that it sent shockwaves. I don't want to say shockwaves. Sent signals to these other coaching staffs. Oh man, D'Antonio offered a 6'3" corner in Texas. Let's go look at that film again. I guarantee that's what Saban said, or one of his analysts said. Looked at it, flagged it, put it in front of Emperor Saban, and offered. And he was supposed to visit Michigan State this weekend, but with Georgia and Alabama coming on, he's now visiting Georgia and Alabama. So, on one hand, that looks like good evaluation even at this late stage. It's a tough way to make hay. In the Midwest, you have to do some of that. You have to evaluate some guys outside of the radius. But I wouldn't go as far as to say recruiting is trash, as you said. But you may turn out to be right 4 or 5 years from now. Your opinion is duly noted and respected. All right. Hayden Vischer says, you must be a stargazer. The last 2-ish classes have some studs in them. There is some, there are indications. Yeah, you're right. The current freshman, it's a good point from Hayden Vischer. The current freshman class and redshirt freshman class, there are some good players in there. Evaluation, I think, is going to turn out to look pretty good with those groups, although those classes were ranked around 30, I'd say. Doors Fan 91. Hope they get Jace Williams soon, and that should be a huge help. Doors Fan. What other schools? I got to wrap this up because I'm running out of batteries here. What other schools are courting Simmons? None that I've heard of. I know LSU was keeping him on the back burner a few months ago. Not sure if that's still the case. LSU is still looking for running backs, which makes me a little bit nervous if I'm a Michigan State guy. Colin Meaney, Simmons will be measuring the snow height with a ruler per his father. If it's above 2 inches, he's leaving. It's Colin Meaney just being a meanie. Okay, Corey Robinson, Florida, and a couple of others, but nothing really that I worry about. Corey Robinson answering the question as to who is talking to Jordan Simmons. I'm going to throw a caution flag on that, and I'm going to tell Corey Robinson to be careful about that, because way back when Paul Konendijk was doing more recruiting coverage for us back in the old days, he was covering Keith Nickel, and Keith Nickel went to visit Oklahoma, and his dad said it was just for a fact-finding mission, and he was committed to Michigan State at the time. Now, that's different. He went and visited Oklahoma at a time when Michigan State was between coaches. The coaching firing had just happened. In this case, there are no indications Jordan Simmons is visiting anywhere. But I think he's visiting Michigan State this weekend, which gives him January 31st for one more visit. It's not quite a Keith Nickel situation yet, but I'm going to throw a caution flag and say I'm expecting Simmons to come to Michigan State also, but nothing would surprise me. And I wouldn't go as far to call it a fact-finding mission, because poor Paul Konendijk took a beating on that one. When Keith Nickel committed to Oklahoma, there were a lot of upset Spartan fans, and they wanted to be angry at somebody. So they were angry at Paul Konendijk and the fact-finding mission, and they hated those words. And you know what? That bothered Paul a little bit. So, Corey, I'm telling you, that's great. I love your opinion, expert analysis. But if this kid chooses somewhere else, I don't want anybody blaming Corey Robinson on this, okay? He's just reporting what the Simmons family is telling him. Everybody got that? I want to protect Corey a little bit. And Corey, for SpartanMag.com, I would suggest we wave the caution flag a little bit and say, as Corey's reporting, and I am too, we're expecting him to be a Spartan. I think D'Antonio does too, but nothing is cemented until it's on the contract, on the letter of intent. I got to wrap this up. What do we have here? I'm running out of juice here, and I don't know if I can get through all of these questions. I'm seeing comments here, not so many questions. Wow, there's a lot of stuff here. I apologize, everybody. I went too slow on this. I lost my place. All right. All right. It's almost like I apologize for the pause here. I lost my place. I didn't want to. If someone takes the time to post a question, I want to entertain it. I've kind of lost my place. Plus, my eyes are not very good, people. I apologize. All right, Colin Meaney. It's almost like Panashuk. I think it says Panashuk was a low 3-star, Jim. Yeah, I think you're right. They were underrated. That's a good place for defensive linemen traditionally, too, the Chicagoland area. Corey Robinson talking about quarterbacks for 2021. Who's the number one quarterback? He says probably Nussmeier, but I really like the kid from Georgia they offered. Kai Milner is another very impressive player. And they offered another quarterback from Arizona tonight that is very good. Nussmeier's getting some big attention, big offers down south. It's going to be hard to pry him out of the south. Abdel Rahman says, I thought Dobbs was a little undersized this year. What do you expect from him in 2020? I think he's got to add some beef and good athlete. I think he might be more of a natural guard. He struggled this year. Preserved the red shirt, learned, knows he has more work to do. But I agree with you. I don't necessarily agree that he's too small. He's certainly not a plus size guy, but he's got a future. He's young. He learned. Corey Robinson, Ty Thompson is the 4-star or Arizona quarterback tonight that was offered. Thanks for Corey for that. Colin Meaney says Camper also a low 3-star. True. Was a tight end primarily at Florida IMG. Colin Meaney, Beasley, no stars. He's MSU standard nowadays. Colin Meaney, telling it like he sees it. Appreciate his opinion. Rosalind Russell, Corey, Ty is dual threat, right? I don't know who he's talking about. Chicago Spartan, Jacob was a borderline 4-star recruit, and he's done a hell of a job at MSU when healthy. Talking about Jacob Panashuk, I would agree with that. That's a Chicago guy defending his own. Corey Robinson talks about Dobbs. I'll move on. Chicago Spartan, Kemper has a ton of potential at defensive end. I agree with that. Rosalind Russell, I'm actually more optimistic about our offensive line than most. Good for you, Rosalind. Possible. They have pieces. And individually, they've all played well individually. Collectively, they were better this year at the point of attack with double team blocking when the run game didn't necessarily show itself with great stats on the ground, but there was progress. Pass protection was pretty good. Among the Big Ten leaders, maybe number one in the Big Ten in fewest sacks allowed. Colin Meaney, Panasonic was number 829. What are you talking about? Now Colin Meaney's just being mean. Rosalind Russell, keep Cole at tight end. The weight he needs for offensive line is not going to do his body good. Chicago Spartan, Jacob was 5.7. Now they're talking about how many stars. They're going back and forth. Glad they're going back and forth. They can settle that themselves. Ghosty Boy says, does Theo's talent give him an advantage? Rocky threw too many interceptions. I agree. Rocky did not make enough progress. Theo's talent. I would have liked to have seen more from Theo Day. We saw him in the spring game. I thought he was comparable to Rocky Lombardi both years. Had a chance to get on the field against Penn State and messed up a reverse pivot on a run play. Came off the field. I don't think he played again. It's going to be a great spring between those two, and information is going to be very hard to come by. Chicago Spartans still talking about recruiting rankings. Colin Meaney. Trayvon Morgan could be Megatron if we are lucky. Now Colin Meaney's being nice. Chicago Spartan, or at least optimistic. Chicago Spartan. Why? Because he was a 4-star? Chicago Spartan. But Hunter Johnson was a 5-star recruit. This goes back to when I was talking about Hunter Johnson. I get your sarcasm. I get it. Rosalind Russell. If they bring in Bryce, which quarterback transfers out? I don't know. I mean, Lombardi's a nice kid. Everybody loves him. Maybe he'd want a shot somewhere else. Maybe he'd want to change positions. Maybe Theo Day would transfer out. I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know. One of them would, though, I think. One of those two. Chicago Spartan. Some of Mark D'Antonio's best have been 2-star recruits. Aaron Mays. Is Harlan Barnett in play to come back to Michigan State? Yes, he is. We talked about that earlier in the podcast. Michigan State has spoken with him. There are some contract hurdles, and Michigan State technically has 2 other defensive backs coaches right now. So, yes, he's in play. The Lensman, do you think MSU's draft pick streak will end in 2021? Does Antoine Simmons have a shot of getting drafted? Yes, I think Antoine Simmons has a shot of getting drafted. The Lensman, does Antoine Simmons or Naquan Jones have a shot of getting drafted? Yes, they both do. Keith Tunstall, any shutdown corners in the transfer portal? No. Well, I was joking there. If there's a shutdown corner, it would be a guy at like the MAC level, small school looking to go up. And Michigan State, with their history, would probably have a shot at something like that. But I've not heard Michigan State. Doesn't mean it's not happening, but I've not heard any rumblings in that regard. They've got, and if we might just sign off abruptly, that if that happens, that's because my battery ran out, because I need a splicer to have charge and the microphone both, but right now I just have one. I need a splitter for both. If you've got, skip it. So, the corner situation, you got Shakur Brown coming back next year. They're gonna miss Josiah Scott for sure. They could use one, but I can't say that they didn't look for one, but I've not heard that. Sheldon was a no-brainer at the time. Corey Robinson, that's what Chicago Spartan says. My Sheldon White opinion is he's a good evaluator, is good at running the front office. I don't believe he is a recruiting guy. Chicago Spartan agrees, but that's exactly what they were looking for in him. Corey Robinson talks a little bit more about it. They're having a discussion, no questions. Looks like all discussion, no questions after that. So appreciate you guys utilizing that part for questions or for discussions on your own. We're going to sign off now. Appreciate everybody checking us out. We went for more than 2 hours today. I apologize about that if I blew your evening. Corey Robinson, it's 11:30. Get some sleep. I had you on here too long. We appreciate you working overtime with us. Have a good day tomorrow. I might get back with you about a recruiting wrap. And in the meantime, if you're not a SpartanMag.com subscriber, get on over to SpartanMag.com. Check it out. You'll have a lot of fun. In the meantime, we plan to do this next week. My voice won't hold out again, but that's the way we roll. Until next time, everybody have a great week. Great time Thursday, Michigan State against Indiana. Big hockey weekend on campus Friday night, Saturday night. If you see me, say hello. Till the next time, my name is Jim Comparoni, publisher of SpartanMag.com. You've been watching Spartan Mag Live. Go over to SpartanMag.com. See you next week. Thanks.